beekeepers.
Yeah,
I think we're ready for.
I think we're ready. Yeah, thank you for
Louise,
that.
if you want to come up front.
Oh, she did already. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So tonight we are going to talk about installing bee packages. I will be doing that segment of the program, and then our delightful Megan will be doing the installation of nukes and talking about that. So for anyone, is there anyone here that has never installed a package? There. Okay. So there are a few. Okay. Easy. It's not difficult. Don't be intimidated by it or whatever. There are a few things that I will point out to make your life a little bit easier, but it is really very simple to do, so there's no real major fear, thing about it. But at least watching this evening, you'll get some insight to make it a little bit easier for you, when you do go about to do it, especially if you don't have anyone that can assist you with it, or maybe you've never seen it done before, but there are like YouTube things and things like that that you can view, to learn about it. But this is wonderful that you came this evening just to see, hands-on what it's done. So to start off with, your package of bees will arrive typically in this kind of a setup. Sometimes they come like in a plastic unit, but for the most part, it's like this. A 3-pound package of bees. It consists of your bees being within this caged unit. It comes with a can of sugar syrup in there. And then in here, right here, you could see it, will be a package separate that has your queen and a few attendants taking care of her and things like that. Basically like to feed her and stuff like that. And so that's basically it. Now, when you go to pick up your bees, usually what I do, as soon as I pick them up and get them, I set them up in my car. You don't want them in the back of a pickup truck or where it's opened, where when you're driving home, the wind's going to hit them and things. It's just little obvious things like that. You want to keep them protected, keep them in the shade, don't have them in direct sunlight, because you really want them to make that trip back home to your bee yard. And then what I usually do, which you don't have to do, but it's just for me, for peace of mind. Usually when I go to pick up my packages of bees, I have a long trip. It's usually about an hour's drive or so, give or take. So what I'll do is I'll take a jar squeeze bottle of my own honey, and I will just very gently just drizzle right here on the front, just a little bit, and then let them take that. They'll take it just like that. And to me, it's like filling up their bellies. They're happy for that ride home. And it kind of soothes them, because just from everything from the travel to get them from the south to here and things, it's just kind of, makes them happy. Our bellies are full. It's the same kind of theory, that we're content. And I'd like to think that's the same way with the bees. If you don't use honey, you could spritz them with a little bit of sugar water, but I find the honey just works nice for me. And then also depending when you get it, if you're getting the package earlier in the season, it could be cold out. So by spritzing them with the sugar water, it could chill them, which you really don't want to do either. So I find that I literally just lay this down like this, just drizzle just a little bit of honey here, let them take it, and then off I go. And then once I do get them home, I'll repeat the same process too. It's just to kind of, just soothe them and, make them a little calm before you do the insert of the packages themselves. Then the one prior thing.
Do you have to worry about the jar spilling when you turn it on its side?
Not really. Their sugar syrup, it's really thick. I almost want to say it's like a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's almost like a really heavy syrup. So not much. And I'm not leaving it there like for an hour. It's just that initial like couple of minutes. And it's amazing how fast the bees will just suck up that honey. It's really pretty rapid. And even if it's there, you could even lie, like put like a plastic cover down the back of your car and then just stand it right up, and then it'll drizzle here, but I mean, they sop it up really quickly. But even prior to this, you almost, just to make your life easier, you want to have your setup where you're going to place your bees ahead of time. Don't pick up your bee. I mean, I wouldn't suggest it, but don't pick up your bees and now get home and say, okay, where am I going to put them? Or trying to get your equipment or whatever. Really think about it ahead of time, have a setup. And your basic setup is your bottom bee box. This is an 8-frame box. I use 10-frame boxes, but it's the same scenario. You have your bottom board. You have in here, let's see, you'll have your inner cover, and you'll have your frames and your deep box. And for this here, this is 8 frames. I use 10 frames. And just have everything prepared ready, because depending on how long a ride you have, you just really basically want to get there, get your bees in safely, and then everyone's happy. And then also depends on the weather. This time of year in the spring, you don't know what you're going to get. I know some folks got bees a few weeks ago already, and it was a snowy day, and it's like, just do it, get them in there, and you just don't know. Saturday, I think it was a little rainy, so it happens, but just do what you got to do. But I would definitely suggest that, have this all prepared and ready to go. And let's see, so now I get them home and I have my bees here. Let's see, yeah. So, okay, no, prior to even doing that, set this. So what I do is I get them to the hive. And now what I do myself, which you don't have to do, but it's just something that I do, depending for the most part, if you're a new beekeeper, you'll just have frames, no drawn out foundation at all. There is a slight coating of wax on these. What I like to do is take a little bit of sugar syrup and just spritz. I spritz all my frames just before installing my packages with a little sugar syrup. It's just something that or I might even take a little spear of honey, like I'll take just a little bit, drizzle it on. So as I'm taking out the frames, I'll set this here, a little bit of honey. I'll take, another frame, a little bit of honey. And then as I'm doing this, when you install the package, you want to take out, for this one, you could probably take out 4 frames is fine. So as I'm taking them out, I'll spritz them maybe with a little bit of sugar syrup, but the ones for right in here, I might drizzle just some honey. And it'll just go right into the frames. It won't hurt anything in here once you set these back here. So for an 8-frame box, I'd probably take out about 4 frames. For a 10-frame box, I'll probably take out 5. And that would be so that when you do dump the bees in, you have enough space here, the bees will settle in. So now these remaining frames, prior to that, I will spritz for them. And then at that point, what I'll do is, I'll try to have a setup where I could set this here, but this is fine right on top of the hive. It's an empty hive, you're not hurting anything. You want to have your hive tool. And I also would have a little screw, which I will show you then what these are for. And then just a little screw with a little pointed end. And then you can also have little magnets, which I'll explain that to you also. So now what you want to do is remove that can of the sugar syrup that's in the box here. If the bees seem like, well, for the most part, they'll pretty much cluster right in here. And then at that point, if it's not too terribly cold a day, I might spritz them very gently with a little bit of sugar water, just to kind of calm them down. And so I implement what I'm doing here. And then just take your hive tool and then just very gently just kind of lift this up here. And you don't have to worry about the bees coming in and out at this point, like coming at your face or whatever, because now you have this can of sugar water that's here. So I'll show you that. So that's what it'll look like. So you just remove this lid here and then just set that aside. And then this tab here, which is stapled on here, is holding your queen. So if that looks like it's loose, you really don't want it to drop down because A, you don't want the queen to get hurt. but it's also easier access for you. So make sure that that tab is always attached there. And that you'll remove after you remove this can of the sugar water. Then really easy with your hive tool, you could just pry this out like this. And sometimes that could be a little difficult. I like to wear a veil, gloves, only because if I get stung, I blow up like crazy. So for my own comfort, I just do it. And then especially if I'm working X amount of bees or whatever, you don't have to. Some people do, some people don't. I have done this, not wearing a veil, and I have gotten stung in the head, and it's not fun, but it's, you know, it's whatever you're comfortable doing. For me, I do like to wear gear when I'm doing this. So if you do have gloves on, this could be just a little awkward, but just take your time, you know, and just carefully go like this. Or what you can do is Megan brought a couple of magnets here that would make your life so much easier, as far as just taking a magnet, boom, and then there you go. It's like magic. It's like, yay. Yeah, so this one, I think you said was handmade, right? And then we'll have this here so you guys could come up and look at it afterwards. And this one, I believe you said at Tractor Supply, they sell a bunch of these things. And I will be at Tractor Supply this, Harbor Freight, yes,
I
yeah.
think you can get them on Amazon.
Yeah, or somewhere, and a nice little magnet. But that little baby has, yeah, that has like really some pull there. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, it's little helpful little things like that. But if you don't have the magnet, just gently pry it. I usually work one area and then just gently, you know, go like this, because it will have a little weight. There is sugar syrup in there. And then just, you know, pull that up like that, yank it out. And then what I like to do is you will have some bees on the bottom, but just to kind of keep everyone happy. Aside for the moment. Then the next point, what I'll do is I will gently just unhook this where the queen is attached to the to this little tab here, and where she's located. So like, just pretend I just took this off, and here's one here. Then you just gently take that out. She will have bees all around her, you know, clustered, and I will just take them at that point. Just gently kind of brush them off, not too much on the screen, because you don't really want to hurt or damage the queen at all. And then just take her, and then right away do an inspection. They will be one queen, she'll have a few attendants, and they're just taking care of the queen. And you'll see them running around, and just check, make sure your queen's alive, make sure she looks healthy, she's doing good. And at that point, if she is doing good, what I will do right away, because once you get going into doing this, you forget. So at this point, what I would do then is just take the little, you know, pointed little screw, and on this end here is sugar. This one has no sugar, there's corks on both ends. So this one has no sugar, this one does, and that's for a slow release. So when you gently take this little screw here, just turn it very gently, and then just pop out that cork. It makes it so much easier, especially if you're wearing gloves or just in general, just to get that out. And then also it helps to not push in that cork to even hurt the queen down the line. And then just remove that, and then I would set her aside. At this point, you don't have to do it. I mean, as long as you remember prior to setting her in the box to remove that cork on the sugar end, but always on the sugar end. If you remove the cork on the other end, I mean, she could just come out, she could just fly away, you'll lose her, and then you don't know where she is or anything like that. So just make sure you see where that white stuff is, that's the sugar that's in there. And then, but I'll explain the rest to that. So at this point, what you could do is just set that right aside until you install your bees. And now, so I have this cover here. So now at this point, you're ready to install your package. It's really easy. Now your bees have eaten a little bit, they're fed, they're somewhat content or whatever, and they're all kind of still kind of clustered. then all you want to do is, now that you have your frames out of the center part here, and then another thing too, you might want to put like a reducer right here in the front. So this way it kind of keeps your bees like right in place, at least for the next couple of days until they get acclimated. And then also it gives them the time to release that queen out of that little cage too. So then at this point, what I'll do is and there's other different methods, but at this point, I would just take the box and then just give it one little hit like that. And then maybe you might have to do one other little hit, you know, just like that, kind of subtle. And then they're all kind of dropped right here. You're not hurting the bees whatsoever. And then just kind of lift it like this and then give it a good shake. You know, a couple of good shakes. Sometimes you might have to, you know, knock it like this, you know, knock it like that a little bit, give a little bit or whatever. And the majority of the bees will just drop right down to the bottom. And they're not really flying. You might have like one or two that'll fly up or whatever, but they're not going to bother you at all. And then what you can do, if you can't get the majority of the bees out, is just set them right down here, right at the base of where your hive is set up. And then eventually they will pick up the pheromone of that queen and they'll just come right back into the hive. You might lose a couple, and it is expected you will have a few that have died. You will see a little bit on the bottom. And then I've heard you could have as much as like an inch on the bottom. I've never seen that at all, but it does happen just from travel, whatever, you know, that you might lose some, but that is to be expected, so don't be shocked by it at all. And then, so now that I got the majority of the bees out, I've set that at the entrance. So pretend that's at the entrance there. And then at this point, what I would do is, now I would take the one that has the queen, and then I don't know if most places do it, but I know when you pick up your packages of bees from Hudson Valley Bee Supply, they will supply you with a large rubber band. So what you want to do is pick a frame that you're going to set your queen cage on, and then take that rubber band and put it around this way. And then what you want to do is take the queen cage and then set it like this on the vertical, like that way. So this way, when you do set them in here, and then the other, let's see, supposing it's like that with the rubber band, and you have this, especially if you're using drawn foundation, by having this close together, you want the bees to be able to feed the queen until she's able to be released, and they could get to her from the bottom. If you leave it like this and you don't have drawn foundation, it's probably okay, but just to be on the safe side, you could just turn it down this way. And then this way they could chew through the sugar that's in there and then slowly release her out. So this way she's slowly getting introduced to the.
So which is the screen side? So where are you putting that?
Like this. Aha, yeah, yeah. You want to show that for our friends at home? So in the meantime, then what you do is slowly put the frames back into the hive. And then the bees are on the bottom, and then slowly they'll just slowly come up in between the other frames and just very gently set that back. Thank you.
How do you tell which is the sugar? Oh, is that cork?
Yeah, both ends have
So
a
that's
cork,
sugar?
so that's sugar. Yeah, yeah, that's like a sugar candy.
Sugar?
Yeah. Yeah, so where you see the white on that end, as you look through the screen, that's the candied sugar that's there. And now the one that has the queen here, just very, very slowly, just place that right in here, like that. So pretend the rubber band is there, and that's like that. So I'll pretend that she's in there, so I'll set that right there. And then what you want to do is just take your hive tool and just very gently press the frames together. Like that. And that is that. And then once that's in place there, you just take your inner cover place that like that. And then at this point, I would feed them sugar syrup so they have some food until they could get out and about to feed themselves. And you can put usually I don't use this because it's really kind of heavier, and it's made more for like in the fall and when it's extreme cold weather, but you can. And I have diluted this before where I've made like fresh batches using this. But then again, I want to get this done. So I'll have sugar syrup with me, a 1-to-1 ratio, and with sugar and water, 1-to-1 ratio. And then just invert that in a container and then just set that right here on top. And because the bees are going to be clustered here, it's easy access. If it's cold, they're still going to be kind of clustered. And then they could get to that food source and still be near that queen and tending to her until she gets out. And then I'll have a second box that I'll set here just to prevent robbing from the bees maybe getting to that sugar syrup. And then, so pretend there's another box here. And then just set your inner cover right on top. And there you have it. And then just leave it alone for about maybe 3 or so days. I installed some packages last Friday and I went back Monday to check all of them. And the queen was still in the cage, which is fine. Don't panic or freak out. And she still looked good. And but then I could see where they were eating at the sugar and they were like really, really close. So at that point, for me, I just left them alone. You can, if you want to, like depending on maybe your work schedule, you can't get back to like maybe by the weekend or something like that. What you can do is you could have, I wouldn't do it like outside of your hive. You want to just open it up again, which you would have had anyway, because you wanted to release this, move your frames apart. Now you take this out. And then as you look, and if she's still there and hasn't gone out, you may not be able to get back to there for a little while. Very carefully, you could pry this up with your hive tool, the screen, but kind of do it kind of covered and protected just to release her out sooner. If it looks like you can't, because by this time, after being there for a couple of days, they recognized her, they picked up her pheromone and things. And but by covering it like this, it's keeping her there and she's not going to take off on you because you really don't want to do that. If that does happen, it might be, I don't know, she might come back. I don't know. Keep your fingers crossed. I don't know, but you could do that. For myself, I might leave it for another day or two and then go back in and check and see what's going on. But you'll see then when you do go back and she has been released, this is empty. You might have one straggler that's still in there that's like hanging out or loose or whatever, but you'll know when your queen is out of there. And then that opening. So at that point, when your queen has exited, just very gently, just take this out. And it's amazing how much of wax and things that they'll build up on this. This could be really attached to your frame, but it's not going to hurt anything. Just really gently remove that and just set that aside. And then just let them get acclimated to their box. Push the frames gently together when you can, and then still feed them. What I do is I just keep feeding them until they stop taking the sugar syrup. Once the weather starts getting nice and they start getting out there, they're gonna, find their sources. But you'll see, when they want it, it'll go. I mean, it could go like in a day or so.
On your inner cover, are you notch up or notch down?
Oh, that's a good question. Notch up? No, right? Yeah. Okay, so notch up.
The first time I put it on, it's down, so I was like.
Oh, did I? Yeah, okay, all right. Okay. Well,
Marianne, are the queens typically mated queens?
oh, that's a good question. They are, right? Yeah, they are. Yeah.
In a package, yeah.
Yeah,
The other way, Mary.
yeah. And they'll have some
That's
drones in
notched
there.
down, that's notched down, right?
Right.
Other,
Yeah, okay.
so you want to notch up, right?
Yeah.
So flip
That's
the
up to
inner
them.
cover.
Okay, so you want me to do it? Okay,
There you
there
go.
you go. All right, so it was right the first time.
I have a question about,
Yes.
what if you quick release the queen? What's your likelihood of them?
You mean right from the get-go?
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it because if, supposing for some reason, there's another queen in there, or sister, or a daughter maybe, or something like that, let them take time to get acclimated, because if it's quick release, they could kill her right away. So I don't
If it's like accidentally, whatever.
Oh,
How long do they know?
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it depends kind of on how long the package they've been in the package. So some people think with just a few hours, even minutes, they know that they don't have a queen, and they will then accept that queen that's in the cage. But kind of industry standard is leave her for 3 days in that time release. But there is really a school of thought that says you can drive her in right when you get the package. Our packages, they've only been in that cage for less than 24 hours.
Okay.
So that's a little more risky than someone that's been in there for like 2 or 3 days. But we had a first time beekeeper that she got 8 packages. She was all in. She didn't know. She just released them all. She was like, and then she goes, I think I've done something really bad. And they were all fine. So chances are they're just fine. But just for caution, I think we would just say, wait till they either get through that candy or just a couple minutes. Yeah, but I think you have a pretty good chance we just direct release it.
They did an accident on one. So we picked up 2 and accidentally, like, just wasn't looking, like, popped. And as soon as I took that cork out, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, you said it.
And
Yeah.
I put it right in, like, pretended that nothing happened and just moved on.
Yeah. That's a gas
I did that when I first started beekeeping. So you're not alone. I'm sure all of us have done things, that's why I think I mentioned that as soon as you're handling that queen, I would do that. Remove that cork right from where the sugar is right away. So you're not forgetting, especially if you're doing a few installations, because it's your first time, you're nervous and you're sweating bullets and it's like, oh my gosh, did I forget something? Or yeah, so it happens. Yeah. So you're not alone.
Is it a good thing for a beekeeper to have somebody that sells queens on speed dial during package installation?
Well, it doesn't hurt.
Does Hudson Valley Bee Supply have a
But
list of people
I
that
think-
provide queens?
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned,
You provide queens.
right? Yeah.
Can I play?
Yeah, come on up.
Yes.
Yeah, come on up.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say something about dead queens, since that's a really good segue. So we sell a lot of packages every year, and about 10% of our packages will have a queen loose in the package. So someone will call up and they'll say, my queen's dead. I need a new queen. And the attendants will be alive, but the queen will be dead. And that's an indication that there is a queen in the package. And the way that happens is these colonies they're shaking from are huge. So they have a team that goes around, they go to this hive, they pull out the queen, that queen's set aside. Okay, you can shake from that package, but it could be a mother-daughter because it's such a big colony. So instead of us saying, here's your queen, and they go, oh, that worked, because they don't go back and look, but that queen was dead, got killed again, but they waited the 3 days, they got through the candy, they cleaned it all out, they took that dead queen and chucked her out the front door. So we ask people to give us a call, take a picture of the dead queen, and just give them a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days. Because by then, if you have drawn comb, she'll be laying. And if you don't have drawn comb, they'll create that little in probably 3 or 4 days. And you should just start to see eggs. And also when you go to the colony, it'll be nice and calm because they're queen right. When you go to a colony that doesn't have a queen, it's distinct, right? They're real fussy, they're real angry. So we just ask people to wait just a few days, but let your package supplier know, and maybe just give it a few days to see if you don't actually have a laying queen, because there's no reason they would kill the queen. There's really not a reason she would just like freak out and die in the cage. Be unexpected, but sure, it could happen for sure. But it's just something, a tip to keep in mind, because you don't want to have that idea that you just stuck another one in and it worked, because then you're just kind of wasting a beautiful queen. So that was my tip. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No.
Just
And
from,
which I
from
didn't
thousands
realize
of
that
packages
either.
that we've delivered.
How many days then do you go when you realize that you don't have a queen?
Before you get a laying worker or
Yeah.
workers? Yeah, probably about 2 to 3 weeks. So nothing will happen. They'll just get super fussy every time you go see them, more and more and more fussy. But you don't want to wait that long because you really want your hive to start to begin to develop. So I wouldn't wait more than 3 or 4 days. If you're experienced, maybe a week on the outside, and then contact your supplier and get another queen for your colony.
We have a question in chat, and basically has to do with Varroa. One, how do you know when the treatment that your package has gone through? Is your supplier telling you that? And then how do you check for varroa and should you treat for varroa at this point?
Yeah, so those are all really good questions.
Thank you, Anthony.
Bees that are imported, right, so ours come from Georgia, have to come with a clean bill of health, which means they do not have high varroa counts. So we assume that our packages don't have high varroa counts. I would say for a package of bees, for a new beekeeper, you're gonna have to wait till probably around July. I mean, you can start doing sugar tests, right, monitoring sugar shake or an alcohol wash right away. But you're probably going to wait till July till you have enough bees that you can treat. So we would use formic acid, and you need 5 frames of brood to be able to use that. The other treatments, there's lots of other treatments with honey supers on, you'll be restricted. And as a growing colony, you probably would want to wait till July till you have a nice robust colony to treat. For us, monitoring all seasons really important, and then monitoring after your treatment. Nukes are going to be a little bit different than that. Was that good? Yeah.
I think so.
Part of the
Good.
question.
Answered my question. I don't know whether it
Uh-huh.
satisfied Tony Antonucci.
Tony, you should answer that question, Tony.
That's
We'll put you,
probably why I
we'll put you on
answered.
speaker right
You said
here.
that, I thought.
That was
"Oh,
like a
you should know."
softball, like or a
Yeah.
hardball.
But that was a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Oh,
throwing
he
that out.
said spraying the bees with oxalic syrup.
Yeah, so the story behind that is Brushy Mountain got the authorization, right? They're out of business, Brushy is, but they were the one that got the label and got the study so that you could use liquid oxalic. But you have to keep in the cage. So the study they did that they said was effective was you had to leave the bees in the cage for 3 days after you sprayed them. Like, what? Like, why would you want to do that? So I don't think that's a very efficacious way of treating your bees before you install them. People talk about it, but really the label says 3 days you're supposed to leave them in the cage. You're supposed to feed them, spray them, and then leave them. But as Ray Towsey knows, they're better off in the hive. So I think you get them in the hive, you get them from a good supplier, then you start to monitor for mites, and you'll know what your mite counts are. We do sugar shakes on our packages to make sure that mite counts are low. You don't have to do that, but if you wanted to, you could do a sugar shake right on your package as you're installing it.
Because that doesn't kill the bees.
There's 2 different kinds. So sugar shaker and alcohol wash. One's lethal and one's not lethal. One's more accurate, one's less accurate. But yeah, so there's that. Did you have a question? Anybody else?
Second box, is it a deep one or a shallow one?
Depending on how you,
Your second box.
yeah, you can use
Yeah, you need one or
mediums,
shallow.
you could use shallows, you could use whatever works for you. I like to run 1 deep and mediums and 8 frame because I don't want to pick up a deep full of honey or even brood. So I like to run a deep and mediums.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to notice is that when you put your equipment together, it's really important to have someone competent building it if you're not going to build it or put it together. And in this case, the person that put this together for me put the bottom board upside down. So that's why this is so little.
That's fast.
It's not upside down, it's in winter mode.
Do you see how tiny this is? This is like
I
the
can see that.
tiniest, like you couldn't get a reducer in there at all.
Yeah.
I was noticing that.
Yeah, so this is wrong,
didn't notice that.
wrong.
Oh, that was
But
bad.
for TV land, it's all good.
I was a little busy today. Oh, but that's upside down, just so you guys know.
So then once you insert your bees and they start to grow, and then I'm sure that'll be a question, when do you put that second box on for their second deep or whatever? Usually wait until they draw out and there's about like 7 frames full of bees, at least that. And then at that point, you don't want to put it on too soon, but put it on at that point, once they fill out and start to multiply, and then, build out and things. And then another thing I forgot to mention, if you're a new beekeeper and you don't have any drawn foundation, if you know anyone that is a beekeeper, try to get 1 or 2 frames that are drawn out. It does help if there's a frame of honey. That's like another bonus because it gives them like a little bit of a head start. And I think for that reason, that's why I spritz them with a little bit of the sugar water if you shouldn't have any drawn foundation at that point. So I think that was just another, thing if you can. Yeah, and I would do that right in the center.
I would just add that if you're on 8-frame gear, you probably want to go to like 5 frames of brood. If you're 7
right,
frames of brood, they're out the door.
Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
right, that's true. Yeah, I do 10 frames, so
Yeah.
I'm at that mode. Yeah, yeah, so there you go. If you're 8 frames, yeah.
One more
So it's a
question.
little less.
If it's from Tony, we're not answering it.
No, no, this is me. What do you do with the old package container? Can you upcycle it in any way?
The wood would, you could burn the wood, it would be
Yeah,
like fire
I've
starter.
done that where I just burned them. I never used it, but I'm sure you could go on Pinterest and.
You know, Charlie, actually, because we all love
see
Charlie,
what you could
he
do.
says he saves this screening and he'll put it like on a box that's got like a little warp on it or something. He uses it like little patches. So he reuses the screening.
Oh, that's
Good
a
old
good
Charlie.
idea.
Thank you, Charlie.
And speaking of the screen, not, yeah, I'll get your question, but now as we're thinking of it, this is a thing that I haven't done yet, but Megan mentioned it. Do you want to mention it? about
Yeah, so
that on the
sometimes
screen?
as we're kind of doing a bubba on the packages, which Ray Towsey likes to call it the bubba when we're going. I can't get them all out. So I'll just take a mat knife and depending on where the bees are, especially, I won't cut it where they are, but if they're like over here, we just installed 15 packages on Sunday and this is just a fresh package. We'll take a mat knife and we'll just cut that. And so then we have a nice big hole that we can go like that and then get the rest of them out that way, rather than trying to get them through the little hole. But we do get through most of them through the hole and then cut that screen to kind of get the rest of them.
So mat knife, screw, hive tool, magnet,
Spray.
If you have,
Right.
yeah,
either honey or sugar water or both.
yeah,
And so there's no smoke at all at this point.
no, I don't use smoke. I don't think anybody, no,
No,
not at
not in a
that point.
package.
Just checking.
Yeah, no, not at that point at all. And then also a container with sugar syrups to feed
Oh,
them.
right.
Yeah, that you place inverted, yeah.
So you have to have the hive and all of that and the sugar and the extra box you
Yep.
put on top and the tools. Okay,
Mhm.
make him a list.
Yeah, have it all ready, prepared. It'll make your life so much easier, for sure.
What you got, Michael?
I just wanted to mention, if you're inverting a container of sugar or water over top of the inner cover, you probably don't want to hang your queen right underneath the inner cover hole. You probably want to have rubber band your queen a little to the, maybe to the back or something.
Yeah, just in case it leaks a little bit.
Just so if you're getting dribble from your container, you're not drowning your,
Mhm. Yep,
or
that's a
drenching
good
her.
point too. Yeah. Do you have a
I did have a question. Is there a time that you should, so you have like the inner cover feeder hole for the sugar syrup, but we also have the external feeder. So when do you switch to external? The temperature thing or is it like? a
Kind of
preference
is,
when you're-
yeah, it kind of is because I'll do it like this within a box, especially if you have extra equipment. I have extra equipment to do that, but also if the temperatures are colder, they do tend to cluster and they will be more here as opposed to coming out here already until the weather starts to get nice. And then then you could do it from the front also and feed them that way. It's not a bad thing, you know. And then I actually have some hives because I'm out in Middleburg, it's colder country, but I also have a bee yards out in Athens and Cooksaki and whatever. The temperatures vary. I mean, it's amazing. So some of mine where it's been a little bit warmer or whatever, I am feeding them from the front entrance. But in the colder hills, I'm feeding them up here because that's where they seem to be right now at this point.
So how do those styrofoam hive top feeders work in that situation?
I would just say,
Yeah,
in my
because I
opinion,
don't use
is
them.
hive top
Yeah.
feeders are really, in this cool weather, is really not a great thing to use. Because it's creating a cold sink where the bees are trying to cluster, right? And we don't want that. Even the styrofoam probably is pretty insulated, but that's a huge sink of cold water, cold
Okay.
syrup. Whereas that syrup right over them, they can warm it just a little bit with their body heat, probably to take it down a little easier for having that big pool. And the plastic hive top feeders are really a no-no because they're clustering right underneath a very cold pool of water. Yeah, so probably just a jar, or because they have access to that, if it's quite chilly, feeding them in the front is quite a distance for them to go and get that syrup to stay warm. That would be my, yeah.
One more question from chat, and it's Tony. Any suggestions on installing packages in early April as opposed to mid-May, i.e. temperature issues in installing? Are there tricks or just do it fast or?
Yeah, just get them in there. I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, no matter what the weather, I think they're better off just doing the installation right from the get-go. It's quick, it's really not that fast. Do your homework, have everything prepared, and it is quick. It's amazing how quick it is. And then just get them in there and they're safe, they're healthy, and they're off to a good start. Yeah.
There's a nice thing to do, which is called a passive install, and it's really in warm weather. And there's lots of videos on that where you kind of set it in, put the queen in, you kind of shake a little on top, you create another layer, another shell, and you leave the package in and they will crawl out. But in cold weather like this, where it's like it got down to the 30s,
Yeah.
you want all those bees out, because what you don't want them is you set it in like this and the bees cluster up here and the queen remains down there with just a little set of bees and she won't make it. And where they're up here stuck, they're staying up in the package. So that's why kind of the thing, I think what Mary Ann talked about is really the safest way is to get all the bees in there so they can take care of the queen. York, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add, so many people
Probably
are
not a
afraid
question.
of the rain, you know, like, oh, I don't want to install my bees in the rain. That is my favorite time to install bees, like not a downpour, but if there's rain, like that's bees that aren't in the air, it's bees that are gonna stay put. You may not know this, but if you install a bunch of bees at once, like multiple packages, they will migrate to the end hive usually. We've had that on a really serious, we put in like 17 packages, came back to let our queens out, make sure to take the queen cages away. And it was like every freaking one of them was in the end hive. Like I could not believe how many bees. And the rest of them had like 500 bees. So they will migrate. If it's cold or if it's raining, you don't have that. So those two things are actually your friend. It's counterintuitive, but I like it that way.
Yeah.
I don't.
And
No, I like drizzle, but I'm not going out and rain installing packages. That's too much.
yeah. But any of the new beekeepers, if you are really hesitant, if this wasn't helpful, if you are terrified, get a hold of another beekeeper, perhaps your mentor. You know, don't be afraid to ask any of us. You know, if we're available, we're here for you. You know, we're willing to help you in any way and things like that too. So, yeah. So I think if no one has any more questions, I think I'll let Megan take over and
This is going to be simple.
installing nukes. So if anyone hasn't seen that,
Yeah.
this is your lady.
So so nukes are like just really small beehives. Most of nukes are raised in like South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, because they have those big populations. Like if we went to our hives now and wanted to make a split, there's not enough bees to make a nuke. You would just be taking your bees and putting them in a box, right, and selling it. So you have to wait a little bit longer. And overwintered nukes, which a lot of people sell, including us, are ones that have wintered over in this small kind of 4/4 or 5/5 configuration. But most of the nukes that are being sold now will have been grown up in the South, and they will be grown up in the South. Yeah, is that good? Yeah. So small colony, you're going to treat this just like you would, you're going to inspect the hive. So you will have smoke and you will have your veil on. And if you're comfortable with gloves, you're going to have gloves on. When you pick up your nuke, most places have you pick up your nuke at night because it's a free flying colony. So ours, when they come in from, we're getting some from South Carolina and from Florida, you will they will be closed up like this. So you pick them up at night because they're free flying colonies. So from us, they'll be in the back behind the big barns. They'll actually be in that field. They'll have been dropped off. We will keep them for a couple of days. We'll inspect them. And then before you get there in the evening, we'll close them up. So you get all your forages. If you pick up a nuke from someone during the day, you're not going to have your field force, which maybe isn't the worst thing in the world, but you're certainly missing quite a few bees. So better off finding a nuke supplier that you can pick up at night. And so when you get them, they'll be closed. There's all kinds of different nuke boxes. This is kind of the most general one. It's called a jester box. It has a little flap right here, and that's what they close in the evening. So when you get them, that's closed up. And what I'd suggest is when you get home, pick them up, take them home, make sure they have cool air, make sure you're not putting them anywhere they're going to overheat, because once we close that door, the bees start to panic. You'll hear them kind of roaring. They want to find the exit. They want to find the exit. And we want to stop that behavior as soon as possible. Keeping them cool slows down that behavior, and getting them home as soon as possible. The other tip is because there's frames in here, they can slap. You don't want that to happen to your queen, right? If she happens to be in there, you can squish her. So you want the frames to travel in your car the same direction, going down the road like this, not like this, because they can slap. So you get them home, you put them right outside on top of your hive you have set up, and then you're going to open that little flap, whether it's a little button or a plug, with your veil on, no smoke, and you're just going to pry that open. And this one has like a weird little front door.
What time at night?
It could be 8 o'clock. Yeah. However long it takes you to get home. It could be 10 o'clock, right? So this, what is that? There we go. So no smoke, gloves, probably veil. And depending on how dark it is or cold it is, a few will pour out. So this is just gonna go like this, right? And then we're done. So that's all we're gonna do for the night. That stops the panicking. They're not racing around and they're trying to find the way out. Maybe a little clump is poured out. So then you're done for the night. You come back in the morning. Meanwhile, they have already left and started to orient to this box, this hive, your yard, your neighborhood, and they're already starting to acclimate to your surroundings, making that beautiful map they do. You know, it's like photographs. As they come out, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they use that same image as they come back. So they're orienting to this configuration. So let's say in the morning, you're ready to put them in. You could wait till the afternoon. If it's raining, you could wait till the next day. They're fine in here. Even for a couple days, they're fine in here. But when you're ready to go, you're going to set it off to the side. And most nukes are 5 frame. I would expect 2 or 3 frames of brood, a frame of honey, and then an empty frame. The empty frame might seem kind of like a gyp, but depending how long they're in there, they need room for expansion because they don't want them to swarm and you don't want them to swarm. So that might just have a little comb on it. It might have no comb, but that's just depending on how long they've been in the box. I wouldn't worry if you don't have any comb on it and it's just kind of empty. So you're going to get your hive.
The box frame, would you suggest that there's empty or some type of comb or?
So if you have comb, that's really great because that'll help in the next process, which is we're going to try to keep them from swarming. We're going to take these 5 frames out, set them aside because you're not going to need these until you put your second box on. And we create a cavity in here for these 5. So again, you're going to open them just like you're in a regular colony, a little bit of smoke. And the most important thing here is going to be the orientation and the order. So this is a colony. Should they put the pollen where they want to around the brood, then they've stored the honey on the outside. And as you're taking these out, you just want to evaluate each frame, looking for the queen, but not getting obsessed if you don't see the queen. So just carefully evaluating how much pollen and honey is in the colony, because now you'll be able to evaluate how much you have to feed them, or if you need to feed them. Most of the colonies come with usually a frame of honey, which is just enough. So we're looking just each one, carefully, but again, not spending too much time because it's pretty stressful on them. Looking for the queen, maybe checking your brood, seeing if you can see eggs and larvae, if that's something you can see. If you're a new beekeeper, usually not. And the last one.
Which one's the gyp?
This one. Is that a bad thing to say? Is gyp a bad thing?
No,
Okay.
no.
There's so many bad things you can say.
Yes, it's best.
It is.
Technically.
Oh,
What is it from your HR over here?
Yeah.
What is it?
Never been gypped.
This is a free one.
There you go.
They give you a free one. Oh, gypsies. I love gypsies. Sorry, gypsies.
They have great weddings.
That's just weird. It's really important. It's really important to look inside this box because you can find the queen on the walls here. And that's super important to get in here. So I take a good long look, spend some time, and then just give it a shake and try to get those bees all out of there. If the queen's in there, I'd take more time. I might really make sure she just walks in rather than shake her in. Make sure she gets in there. And then I remove this. So they've oriented to this shape, but they're going to orient to this too. So if you just remove this, they're going to come back to here. They're not gonna just like fly around, not being able to orientate.
You said orientate.
I said orientate, and I said gypsy. This is not a good night. So, what was it? Oh, yeah. Okay, so one thing I want to say is that of these 5 frames, the next thing to consider is swarming. So the reason we don't like to sell nukes to new beekeepers is because we say these are like racehorses, and really you want a backyard pony when you start, because the game is on. They've been on 5 frames. We don't know how long. If there's a ton of brood, they are ready to swarm. Sometimes when you're installing them, you'll see swarm cups at the bottom, which means they are really ready to go. So of the 5 frames, if you have a frame of comb, I would take 1 frame of the original 5 and I'd move it out and put that frame of comb right in there. And maybe if it's super strong, I might even take another frame of comb and tuck it in, move that 1 frame out. If I only have foundation, I might only try 1 foundation to move it out, because they can ignore foundation. They can be like, not interested, we're swarming anyway. So the most important thing is to come back and try opening that brood nest by putting new frames in and pulling that brood out to keep them from swarming, because it really is game on once you install a nuke, and the name of the game is try to keep them from swarming. And the same thing goes true for Marianne. I would put on the second box at about 5 frames in an 8 frame, maybe 7 frames in a 10 frame. And when I added that second box, I would take a frame from the outside that has a little bit of brood, and I would exchange it with another frame, maybe an empty frame or comb on the top when I put that second box on. And having that open brood, a little bit of eggs and larvae will draw those bees up. Again, try to prevent swarming. So draw them up to the second box, because sometimes when you put a big box of empty foundation on, not interested. So this will make them interested to come up. What else am I missing here? Man who knows all.
And then the purpose of that
Oh,
is
yeah,
giving
feeding.
them space.
Giving them space,
Yeah.
right, so they don't swarm. Feeding is an optional, right? So if you have a lot of just foundation, you should feed them, but you got to evaluate that, because they will plug out and swarm. So nukes, you're gonna have to look at each frame and evaluate. Like if there's nothing there and there's no honey, feed them, because they'll starve, because you have huge brood overturning. You might even have to feed a pollen patty. If you look and there's no pollen, you don't see any pollen coming in the next couple of days, you could use a small, like a quarter of a pollen patty, half a pollen patty. You don't want to encourage small hive beetles by putting a big patty on. It's a small population for a full-size pollen patty. Feed them and try to keep them from swarming. I think that's the game of the game. Any questions? No, it was that good, eh?
When does it pick up property for
For nukes, for Hudson Valley Bee Supply, if you ordered a nuke in a, this is so confusing. If you ordered nuke in a wooden box, it's the 28th or 28th and 29th. If you ordered a nuke without a wooden box, I think it's May
Cinco de Mayo.
4th, no,
Yeah,
5th
4th
and
and
6th, 4th and 5th,
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th. It's on our website. If you look under bees.
Understood, right? You'll send an email?
Yeah, we just preemptively put up, because now is
I
the
just
time.
can't remember which one.
Yeah, so preemptively, we just put up tentative dates, because people get antsy right now. Yeah.
I
But we'll
figure
send
it come
out-
when it comes.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys have a great time installing your bees.
I have another question.
Oh, yeah.
So if some of the frames that I have like little bits of honey and stuff on it, that still seems perfect or not?
Perfect.
Oh, great.
Yeah, anything that's drawn comb, anything with honey or pollen.
But I want to slow the horses down a little bit.
Yeah, you're gonna open up. Slowing the horses down just means putting that in there, on the outside frames. Like if you move, if the first 5, if you take that first position of the, hey, Kate, you headed off? Are you headed off?
Well, shortly.
Okay, well, it's good to see you. So if you take that first frame and move it out and put comb in there, you're totally slowing them down. That 5th frame, move it out, put comb in there, it's perfect. It's the temptation is to put, if you can put comb in there, you'll totally slow them down. And if it has a little bit of honey and pollen, that's great. Yeah, it won't slow them down unless it's like a full frame of honey.
So I'm starting with 2 hives. Should they be close to each other in different parts of the yard? Like,
So for us, about a foot apart, maybe if you had 2 feet, that would be good. And if you could put them on either side of the yard, but for us, it's about bears and about electric fences. So that's why we keep them kind of closer together.
I don't really have a problem with bears. I'm in Athens.
Anybody in Athens with bears?
They're around.
Well, they
I
are
mean,
around.
They're
Yeah,
around,
I
yeah, you
had
just
a-
don't see them.
Oh, yeah, I have a bee yard in Athens that it did, it destroyed the whole yard.
Do you
Yeah,
have
they
any
weren't
dogs?
fenced in. yeah.
Big
I have
dogs?
2 little dogs.
Sometimes big dogs that are
helps.
kind of free range really help. But I would anticipate having bears and I would kind of prepare for that.
You need a fence.
You're a sitting duck.
And like you have to actually put the fence up when bears get there, so.
Yeah.
Did someone tell you that?
I try not to be quite that bold, but yeah. Yeah,
That's probably
Well, stuck right into my
an electric fence is
The next morning. Yep, you found out, didn't you?
We have a question from Chad. It's from Rick S. I'm not quite sure what he means. It says, when to reverse? Start of dandelions?
yeah. So when we see, you can even reverse before that, depending
Reverse
on.
meaning,
So what you're gonna do, so reverse means is another it's another way to keep bees from swarming. So right now they're in the top box.
Yes.
And as the honey comes in, it'll press them down, right? As we say that they keep honey in the attic. So, but what that pressure does is starts to move the bees down, but at some point they're going to swarm. So what we do as beekeepers is kind of trick them. So we'll move that box that they're in now down below. We'll put the empty box on top, and that's called reversing. Sometimes we reverse and we put honey supers on at the same time, just because we run a lot of bees. But I would say probably in the next, I would say, excuse me.
Where
there
Rick
something
is
from
now.
York would like to reverse now. I would probably wait until we had a little bit more consistent warm weather, because when you reverse, you're putting the bottom of the hive, you're putting all your brood, and they don't want brood at the entrance. And when it's cold, they want that heat and they want to be at the top. So I might wait like at least maybe a week or 2 from now, and I would reverse. But I think you probably could get away with reversing now. It's just a little cold, depending where you are. If you're up in the mountains or down.
Yeah, where we are, it's colder.
so now reverse means that's an overwintered hive with 2
Mhm.
hives on it. It's not, doesn't have anything to do with the nukes.
No, it's just it's
Yeah.
a spring management.
So I reversed today.
Oh.
When I was looking in what was the bottom boxes, now the top, there was like nothing in there. So that was filled with honey, but now it's like empty. And I have 8 frame deeps. And there's maybe like 5 frames or so, or I think like 5 frames of like brood and, like different assortment that's now at the bottom. But the top is completely empty.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want.
That's what you want.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I got nervous.
Yeah, I think,
Go back.
did you evaluate the frames that have the brood on them, and was there honey and some nectar or pollen?
So they started bringing, there's honey. So like the 2 outer frames have maybe like half of capped honey. There's some nectar, there's some pollen. They started bringing pollen in, and that was what was going into like the empty.
Yeah, that's
So we just
perfect.
put that.
Yeah, if you wanted to stimulate brood laying a little bit, you could do 1-to-1 syrup. That stimulates the queen to lay, or the colony to lay, is because they then are think nectar's coming in. So if you want to kind of get a little bit of a jump on it, make sure they have enough stores, a couple jars of syrup might be appropriate at this time if you wanted to. Otherwise, we should be seeing some, flowering trees soon, and that extra honey on the outside should be enough. But if you want to do a couple jars of syrup.
I have the syrup on there now.
Oh.
It's pollen patties. So do I take the pollen patties off at this point?
No, you can leave them on. Yeah, because we're just starting to get pollen and not a huge amount of pollen.
And I'm up in the.
Yeah, yep, good. Yes.
Do you put, hi, how are you? Reducer in the front?
No, not if you put the bottom board on backwards. There's not very much room. But in fact, if you do it the right way, you definitely would want a reducer on there, because it just keeps the bees from pouring out. Packages more than nukes, because nukes kind of, but yeah, it's either one. I definitely would. Packages, it's my experience that when you put a package in, because they're at the bottom, they kind of want to just pour out the front, and it keeps them from just kind of pouring out. But either way, I would leave a reducer on for maybe the first week, depending how strong the nuke is. Yeah.
If when you get your nuke back home at nighttime and you want to let them out and you're out there with your headlight flashlight,
No flashlight.
I'm just saying, if there's a red.
Oh,
bulb
red.
on your
Yes.
flashlight.
I think, yeah.
I would not use,
Do not use a light. The light is come sting me in the face and head.
unless you have a red.
But red is one of those really amazing things. They can't see red. We've moved bees at night. This guy was just done with his bees. This was years and years and years and years and years ago. But he just called us and he's like, I'm done. The bear's just been chewing them up. We're just done with our bees. And we were like, had time then. We used to do things like this. We went out with it the day before and we, secured all the hives and we went out that night and they'd really been attacked. So we put like wood on them and screws in them and they were the most vicious bees because they just were done with being attacked. And we went out that night, the three of us, with a trailer and we had our, camping with red on. And sure enough, we get there and we're like loading them on this little trailer and it goes shift. And we're like, no. And they came out like ants and they were all over their trailer, but they couldn't see us. And we're like, don't move, don't move, don't move. Like this. And like literally shut off all the lights, like the lights on the truck and stuff. And like it just looked like ants. And they were like, where are you? And it's like, don't breathe. But it totally works and it's amazing. And when I was in Africa, I've done work with Bees for Development. Most of you guys have heard. They had no idea about red. And they use, in Ethiopia, they actually use flashlights when they go out to work the bees at night. And it's a cultural thing. If I could explain to them not to do it at night, I would. But I said, if we use red, and they were like, red, and they had from cars, the headlights and the taillights, and there's lots of scrap everywhere. And it was like transforming to them. They were like, she's like, where did she come from? I'm like, it's, so they started putting taillights on their flashlights for that very reason. So small impact, but I do what I can. But yeah, it's a really cool thing to go out and maybe tap on the hive with a red headlight on. Good. Thank you for that, Michael. It's very good.
Right,
I think we might have taught you that, no?
another question.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Should
there,
you be answering?
yeah. Is there a difference whether a person should go with a package or new?
Yeah, so like I said,
pros and cons.
packages are really sweet to start if you're a new beekeeper because they grow along with you. When you first see that beautiful comb coming on, it's like, oh, wow, that looks like the book. That's amazing. And then you start to see eggs and they draw it out more and then you've got a whole frame. You start to kind of learn with the book. When you put a nuke in, it's like, what is this? And it's like eggs, honey, pollen, I don't know, stinging insects. And I think it can be overwhelming. And then all you have to think about is try not to let them swarm. And we've had people like, we sold a lot of bees. And a lot of times people come in and they're like, they never grew out of the one box. And it's like, because they swarmed the first day, or they say, they never swarmed. I never saw them swarm. Yeah. And I think, are you really that, like you never see it. Like there's a really good chance you didn't see them swarm or the population never changed, that kind of thing. So I think it's totally possible if you want to just jump on it to have a nuke, but I think really packages are a really nice way to start beekeeping because you learn along with your package and they're economical too,
But I read on the internet that those bees from Georgia are going to freeze to death in New York.
They come with little sweaters. We knit we crochet little. So our experience is not that. A couple of years ago, many years ago, we had 2 out yards over in Red Hook and one in Pine Plains. And we set one up with nukes from a local supplier, and then we did one just with packages. And it just happened to be timing. It's just what we did. And we had better results of overwintering our packages than our nukes. And it had to do with mite control. The yard that had the nukes was too close to another beekeeper that was treatment free, who was really trying to invest in the idea of their bees would be the ones that would survive varroa, and they would like be the hygienic ones and all of that. And that's admirable, but I don't want to keep bees next to that because I don't want to take that. Take
You want
that
to name them?
No.
Because Rich just did.
So it had to do with varroa control. And because we were so close to a treatment-free beekeeper, we had a real challenge in getting that varroa number down. So packages are big packages. The Italian bees will create large, big colonies, which is great for a new beekeeper because they'll draw out comb like crazy. big populations, lots of babies, lots of comb that draws out. So that's a really nice thing. If you wanted to, even later in the year, make a split for them and maybe overwinter a nuke with a local queen or let them make their own queen. That's a fun thing to do maybe at the end of the season or July if you want to make a small nuke, or the next year if you wanted to raise your own queens, that kind of thing, buy local queens. We are still love to buy other people's queens. We carry Sam's queens a lot. They're really great. We also, Ange from They Keep Bees, we had their queens last year. One year we got Pendle queens, which are these beautiful cordovan bees, and they have a genetic mutation, so they almost have no stripes. And these beautiful, like, they almost look like fireflies. They just glow. And it's so fun to introduce that colored queen into a colony and watch the color shift over the weeks. All of a sudden, you see the yellow go away and the black go away, and you just see these like golden red bees. So we all love to try different queens. And I think once you get into it and you have a few years under your belt and you can kind of play with them, the one thing we don't play with is Russian queens because they don't play nice.
Ever.
I would
They'll
say,
invade your neighboring
let me
hives.
just say, if you want to do Russian queens ever just to try, Dan Conlon from Warren Culver Apiary has beautiful Russian bees. You just can't let them swarm because once they outcross, they get, I think, pretty mean or aggressive or defensive. But Russian bees are really fun to try. Just don't let them swarm either. Yeah. Good.
We have a little comment from the peanut gallery here, Mr. Antonucci again. Megan, so going back to your Africa experience.
Yes.
So you were saying you created a red light district around their hive? What made the red light
You
district?
know someone that did. You know it. Actually, really, it's really sweet. I'll just tell you, in Uganda, the same kind of interesting story. There's a program in Uganda for disabled. And if you're poor in a very poor country and you're disabled, and so this is for the deaf and the blind, you're really it's just so difficult. You're not able to really contribute to society as far as jobs and learning a language. It's so incredibly sad. And I went to see this program that was just starting. And I thought, how can you teach someone that's deaf or blind to beekeep? And I could kind of understand the deaf thing. So we went to the first part of this program that Bees for Development was looking to fund. And they said, we had a translator for the deaf, and they were working on kind of the teaching material. And Hope, this woman's name, she said, they want to know what your name is. And I said, well, it's Megan. And she goes, no, what your name is. It's a description. And I said, I don't have a name. And they said like this or this, like all different kind of symbols were their names. And they said, they'd like to give you one. I said, oh, okay. And they go like that. I don't know what that symbol means. And so then Hope would introduce me as this. And they would say, and your name? And I would say, this. It was from the hair. It was, yeah, in that program actually. So, and then the blind beekeepers, as amazing as it is, they have a guide, and the guide is usually the son, the eldest son. So they go into this program, but it's really for the beekeeper. And then they have a guide, and they have string lines into their apiaries, and they're in charge, and they have learned, but it's like generational. So it's really cool. So the father is the beekeeper, and then the son is the guide. But obviously the son is learning beekeeping. So you're creating this generational beekeeping. And that was amazing to see them into an apiary together on a string line. It was just amazing. And then the one that I remember the most was as we were just starting to leave, and we were just kind of, again, it was like a test program. The man he had like a gash across his face. It was really kind of hard to look at, and it was kind of weeping, and it was like really just something terrible had happened. And he said, before you go, and this is through the translator, he said, I want you to know, when I was a young boy, I was taken by the Somalian army to be a soldier. And this is taken from Uganda. So he was stolen from his family. And he said, and when I escaped, they caught me and they blinded me and they let me go. And when I made it back here, I had nothing to do. I have no one. I have nothing to do in my society because I am blind. But this is giving me hope, and it's giving me respect in my community. And please come back. Please help us. And I thought, I was just like a crazy. And good news, is last Friday, Paul Mitchell, somehow with the hair again, is donated to that program, a multi-year contract with Bees for Development. So that program will continue with John Paul Mitchell, the Hair People's donation. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. One thing I would like to say, what I would like to organize again are BR tours. And we did that a few years ago, and then when COVID came about, it kind of put a botch to that. But BR tours are wonderful. If you've never attended one, they're fabulous. It's where a fellow member will invite whoever would like to join. Maybe they only want like maybe 10, 12 people. Maybe they're like, hey, just come out, you know, and check out my hives. And what that person will do is just, you know, have a group come, like usually in the morning between like 10 and 2 or whatever. They'll give a time frame. And then you actually get to see inside the hive and what's happening. So if you're a new beekeeper, it's a wonderful asset. It really is. So here's my plug, TV Land or anyone here. If you would be gracious enough and you'd like to host one, contact me, let me know. And they're fabulous. And it really does help beekeepers. And it's a great opportunity to get together too. You get together for a morning, you see another setup. I've been to some, you know, after beekeeping for several years, I'm always learning something. It could be a gadget. I went to Wayne Weaver's one year and he had this really cool, and there was a couple of things. One was the queen catcher I had never seen. And I was like, I got to get one. So I got one. And then one was to pick up the frames, you know, whether it's for woodenware, if you use plastic frames, and just little different things that you'll see, little techniques that are wonderful, but it is actually good. So this way, you know what you're looking at if you're not familiar, if you're intimidated and things like that. So I'm looking forward to hearing from somebody out here, you know, in the near future. Let's line something up, okay? All right. So I think we're good. Did anyone have any more questions?
Hang on just a minute. I think we're going to stop recording. Thank you.
All right, bye, everybody.
No, they're still there.